Hey everyone, Thomas here with ForReel Movie News and Reviews, and it has been an exciting couple weeks as I have covered the Vancouver International Film Festival. But what's really cool is I've had some friends also covering it, and we are here now to discuss at least three of our favorite movies, each from the festival. I am happy to introduce to you Leanne from 103.5 QMFM Vancouver. Leanne, hey, how are you?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course. And then we have Matt from Awesome Friday with us as well.
Hey, good to be back. Thank you.
Oh, man. Okay. Thrown together intro. There we go. There's a lot of good movies that I watched at the festival, and I'm really excited to hear what you guys watched and what your favorites were. I totally encourage you guys to throw in some like honorable mentions along the way, just like quick notes about things that may not have made it into your top three, but could be fun just to kind of discuss, and it'll be interesting to see what things cross over and what we all experienced.
I have a question before we get going, actually.
Yeah.
How many did we all see? I saw 17 in the end. So how many did you guys see?
That's a great question.
Ooh. I got to count mine up too.
10, 11, 12, 13.
I always keep track as I'm going because if I don't, 15, I'll just forget.
I'm pretty sure I did 16.
27.
Oh, wow.
Ooh, go Leanne. Well done.
And then the festival's not over yet. There's still
and it's not over yet. We still a day and a half. Yep.
Still a whole day. That's right.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Leanne, as the winner of that little contest we just did there, why don't you go ahead and start? What's one of the of your top three? What is your third favorite movie of VIFF this year?
Third favorite movie would have to be No Ordinary Man. This was also showcased at TIFF. Nice. I was all about documentaries for this year's film festival. So all three of my movies that I picked for my top three were documentaries. And No Ordinary Man was about American jazz musician Billy Tipton, who was really prolific in the 40s and 50s. And it wasn't until after his death in 1989 that it came out that he was a trans man. And this documentary was just, I loved it so much because it righted all the wrongs. When he passed away and it came out that he was a trans man, the media sensationalized this secret life that he had and misgendered him with every account. And I just love that this documentary just tried to right that wrong and give him the honor that he deserved for being an amazing musician.
Nice. I didn't either, but it was on my radar and I wanted to. I just didn't have the time to get around to it. But I think you make a valid point, Leanne, when it comes to documentaries. I think, and I mentioned this when Matt and I did our preview, is that there were so many documentaries going into this that I'm like, I want to see all of these. Mm-hmm. Documentaries certainly stole the show, I think, at the festival this year.
Definitely.
Yeah, there's at least one in my top three. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thanks for pointing out. Thanks for telling us about No Ordinary Man, Leanne. Matt, what are you thinking for your number three?
I think for my number three, I'm going to have to go with the Helen Shaver directed Happy Place.
Nice.
Which is based on the play by Pamela Sinha and starring Clark Backo. I could just start by saying I'm predisposed to like films that are based on plays, really talky plays. Mm-hmm. And this is very much that, it's several people generally in a room talking and with really good interplay. But it's also a movie that's about women dealing with trauma and helping each other through that trauma. And at a meta level, at least a large part of the story is autobiographical. And it really is about like Pamela Sinha, the writer, sort of working through that trauma. It also is holds a special place in my heart because I got to interview both Helen Shaver, the director, and Clark Backo, the lead actress. So I had a lot of coverage on that, a lot of exposure to it. I ended up watching it like 3 times because I watched it once and then I wrote about it and then I watched it again before the first interview and then I watched it again with my wife before the second interview, so it sort of had a lot of staying power, and it didn't get tired of it all 3 times, which says a lot considering I watched it 3 times in about 5 days. So
Nice. On your recommendation, Matt, I actually did watch Happy Place. I don't think I'll have time to get a review out for it, but it's certainly what you're talking about with that kind of theater to cinematic translation. Like that feel is there, but it's so organic with the movie. Like if I didn't know that it was a play at first, I would have just thought, oh, this is a very like fresh take on the story. Like this is a very different way of experiencing the story. But it's very compelling and very, dialogue driven, and the performances are great. And yeah, it was a really great recommendation on your part, and I appreciate that.
mm-hmm. It's also Helen Shaver's kind of a big deal, the director, and this is her first feature film, like, or for theaters as a movie, like, so it was kind of a big deal that way too. She's kind of a low-key Canadian legend.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well done. Leanne, did you get a chance to see that one?
I did. And I loved how every woman had a different story or reason why they were there. Mm-hmm. And it was really powerful, the interactions between them. And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Good one to mention, Matt. Thanks. So I was just mentioning to Leanne before we got on the line that I hadn't nailed down a number 3 yet, but I'm between 2 of them, and actually both of them were on my most anticipated list before the festival started. So I will mention that Into the Storm documentary was one that I was considering making my number 3, and it was really good. I like that documentary a lot, but because I talked about it in the pre-festival segment, I think the movie that I want to discuss here for number 3 on my list is On the Quiet, which I also mentioned in my preview, but haven't really had the chance to go into it that much. I mean, I have an interview with the director for Into the Storm, Adam Brown. I have that on my blog, so you can get lots of information about that movie on my blog, and I'm sure there's other coverage out there. But On the Quiet, it's such an interesting movie to watch, particularly in an era of like in the Me Too era, watching how the story is unfolding, and how this girl's complaint about the teacher that she is saying is inappropriate around her, how it's taken by different people, and the tension that builds throughout the movie. And on top of that, it's complemented by an amazing score, because the premise of the movie is that these students are part of this like string orchestra, and so that lends itself to like just this beautiful music that happens throughout the movie, which almost juxtaposes itself against the this accusation that has to be fleshed out and exposed and dealt with somehow. I really liked how subtle the movie was with all of this, but also how compelling the narrative was. So and the finale, like how it ends, again, is very low key but very impactful. There was just a lot that I liked about this movie, and I put it on my list at the ahead of the festival as something I wanted to watch. But now that I've seen it, it's even more of a movie that I really appreciated, and I'm happy that I got a chance to see. So
I didn't see that one either, to be honest.
I didn't either. I think I might have to before the festival's over.
If you can, I mean, there's a little bit of time left. If you can, I do recommend it. It's very tense, and it's not like I would call it a suspense film. It's a drama, but there's just this like tension that kind of builds throughout the movie, and then when you get to the climax and finale, it's just all that tension kind of comes to a head, and it's done so tactfully. And I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember the director's name, but I'm pretty sure this is his directorial debut for a feature film, which, and he's also a violinist himself, and all of those things just kind of add together to make a really, really interesting theatrical experience for this. So, yeah.
Very cool.
All right. Leanne, number 2.
Yes, number 2. Keeping in line with the LGBTQ theme that I had from my number 3 pick. Number 2 for me was Cured. This one was another amazing documentary about the fight that the queer community had before the Stonewall riots in 1969 against the American Psychiatric Association to have homosexuality removed from the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual, because when that manual first came out in 1952, homosexuality was seen as a mental illness. So a group came together and fought the American Psychiatric Association to have it removed. And it was such an amazing documentary, everyone's account of their fight against having this removed. And it was just, I loved it. There were moments where you're like so happy about all the stories that they're talking about. And then there's moments that you're crying because hearing the stories of what people went through for so-called cures for homosexuality are just devastating. And I recommended in my write-up for it that it's not just a movie for people who are part of the LGBTQIA+ community, but for anyone who's a proud ally. It's such an important part of history for everyone to know.
That's awesome. I feel like I remember you talking about that at some point, and I can't remember if you had seen it or if you were going, or if you were looking forward to seeing it, but I'm really happy that it made it to your top 3, in fact, number 2 on your list. That's exciting. That was another one that I wanted to get around to and just did not have enough time because I'd watched so many documentaries already. But yeah, I'm gonna have to keep an eye out on that and see if I can catch it at another festival or if it goes to VOD sometime. It sounds really good.
Yeah, I loved it.
Nice. Very cool.
I didn't see it either, and I'd actually quite like to. Do you know if it's going to video on demand or anywhere anytime soon?
I'm not sure, but it's definitely on the festival circuit. They have their own separate website that shows all the different festivals they've been at so far. So
I think I'm on the list for a couple more of those this year, so hopefully I'll get to see it.
Nice.
All right, Matt, number 2.
So my number 2 is documentary, a Canadian documentary. It is An Inconvenient Indian,
Nice.
which is just a hell of a thing, really. It tells the story of the Indigenous experience within Canada. I mean, there's not really much more else to it. It draws a straight line from how we treated Indigenous people when we arrived here to how we treat them today. Spoiler alert, not very well, to put it as lightly as humanly possible. It's a film I think is really important because, the big story in the world right now is, there's racism in America, and a lot of, even speaking to other American friends, there's this perception that like you cross the border and it all stops, and that's just not at all the case. And this film really sort of puts that into sharp relief. It's also told in a really interesting way. It's very sort of free flowing and not from the sort of usual sensibilities you'd expect a straight up documentary to be from. It's framed by a story of by a First Nations story and narrated by Thomas King, who wrote the book that it's based on. And I really hope that like it goes somewhere where a lot of people, but a lot of Canadians in particular, get to see it, because I feel like it's a pretty important film.
That's great. I mean, as an American, I think that your observation about our this general like American mentality of like cross the border and racism ends is pretty accurate from what I've like from my worldview, I guess. We kind of here in the States deal with our own issues so much that we don't think about like like how these issues are playing out in other parts of the world, including Canada, which is, you know, like an hour away from me. So I expect to watch that one and John Ware tomorrow. I think those are going to be the last two movies that I finished the festival on, and I'm looking forward to both of them.
Yeah, John, I could just as an honorable mention, John Ware Reclaimed is also super interesting, and along the same theme, African American cowboy in what would become Alberta is another story of like it also draws a straight line from, you know, how we treated Black people back then to how we treat them today as well. It's very, very interesting.
Nice. Leanne, did you watch Inconvenient Indian?
That was actually my number one pick.
Oh,
So
very cool. Well,
I'll hold off.
Okay, very cool. I'm excited to hear about that and to hear your take on why it's your number one. So that's awesome. I think my number two, so I did put a documentary at my number two, and I think this one actually kind of surprised me with how good the production value turned out, because I remember watching the trailer for this and thinking, okay, this looks like kind of a scrappy documentary that was thrown together just to document this incredible event for sure. But the trailer didn't really sell me on the quality. But when I watched the movie, it turned out to be such a well put together documentary. And that movie is The Race to Alaska. Completely surprised me with how well the production value was and how organized it was as a documentary. And it also helps that Port Townsend is like less than an hour and a half away from me. Like I'm here on Whidbey Island right now, hop a ferry over and you're in Port Townsend. So it's kind of nice to be so close to an event that's significant here in the Pacific Northwest. So I was excited to watch that, and really excited to hear the stories about how challenging this race is, but also the perspectives on how these racers really persevered through that challenge in order to like kind of dig deep in themselves to find that fortitude to complete the race. And all the it's great because it's not just about the successes. It talks all about the failures, the missteps, the issues and blunders, like everything. The racers are so enthusiastic about talking about all components of the race, good, bad, or ugly. And it's such a fascinating topic and event to learn about that is so close to where I live and where I grew up. So I was very, very impressed with that. Here, up in Bellingham, they're going to be featuring this documentary as part of October this month, and I'm very thrilled to be able to like share with my Bellingham friends and friends here in the northern part of the state that they can watch it here pretty soon, probably within the next couple of days. So that was a pleasant surprise watching The Race to Alaska.
Nice. I love when something hits really close to home. And like several of the films at VIFF this year were filmed right here in Vancouver. I love when there's like that personal home connection that kind of makes it a little bit more meaningful when you watch something.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really like it when something like that catches you completely off guard too, like something you expect to be sort of like, yeah, this looks kind of interesting, and then it really sort of clicks for you. I really enjoy that experience.
Yeah, and that was exactly this one with The Race to Alaska. It turned out to be such a well put together documentary. I was totally surprised. So loved it. All right, Leanne, here we go. Number one.
Well, my number one has already been mentioned by Matthew with a beautiful summary of it with Inconvenient Indian. That was my number one. And as an Indigenous person, this documentary was just phenomenal. I loved that it just like shattered the misconceptions that people have of who are First Nations people. And it made me really proud of my heritage. I just love that it kind of encapsulated who First Nations people are as survivors, as creators, as artists, as musicians, land defenders, and so much more. And I love the soundtrack too, the music that was in it. I was constantly like Shazamming, like, oh, who's this artist? Who's this artist? And that's one of my favorite things about seeing films at the film festival, is when they're paired so nicely with amazing soundtracks. And at least with being online this year, I could Shazam and not have to worry about people in the theater being like, why is she on her phone? Like, no, I'm trying to get this song.
Yeah, it's interesting the soundtrack, actually, because I remember when I was watching it and writing about it, I remember I didn't include that in my review, but like, yeah, the soundtrack and score of that film are also pretty phenomenal. Lots of really great and really diverse artists within it as well, like from many genres of music that you wouldn't, as a white dude, you wouldn't necessarily expect, but all in a good way. Like, I find that film really, like, I had a pretty good idea of what goes on in Canada, but like that film still opened my eyes to several aspects of the experience. So I think it's a really important one.
I agree.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm really excited to see this. This will be the first thing I do in the morning is turn on Inconvenient Indian.
Nice.
Like,
and
that actually really,
pick up the book as well.
Okay. All right. Nice.
Yeah, I haven't read the book, but it's now firmly on my list. It's near the top of my list to read now.
Same.
Awesome. I can't wait to watch that one now. Let's see. Matt, you're number one.
Well, my number one is one that I had mentioned in our preview video. Hailing from Denmark, the land of my ancestors. It is Another Round, directed by Thomas Vinterberg and starring Mads Mikkelsen. I don't quite know how to say how hard this film landed for me, but it really, really did. I loved everything about it. I think Mads Mikkelsen gives his best performance in years, and that's that's a pretty towering statement, I would say, among his just filmography of amazing performances. But also just the idea of like being slightly drunk all the time. It's just, I think, really compelling. Especially like, it's interesting for me. I don't drink alcohol anymore, but I still found it really compelling, their story. And I definitely saw pieces of my experience in there. Like, it's definitely the turning point in that film was where they're like, we've had very nearly 2 drinks. What if we had 3? And it sort of spirals from there. And then like, who knew Mads Mikkelsen could dance, man? Like, did you guys watch this film?
Not yet.
Oh yeah.
I actually, I could not get access to it, unfortunately. But I'm so excited to see this because you have been raving about this movie, and I am very sad I couldn't see it at VIFF, but at some point I hope to check it out.
Yeah, it's Leanne, if you get the chance, I highly recommend it. It ends on a big, joyous dance, and it is beautiful.
Nice.
There's also a scene in the middle where they get drunk on Sazerac and dance to Motown, and it's just phenomenal. Like, it's the whole thing is so well put together, and it's not a perfectly happy ending either. Like, it's a little bit on the melancholy side, but in the best way. Melancholy but joyous and hopeful at the same time. This movie's definitely going to be in my top 10 for the whole year.
Wow.
I don't know where exactly, but it's going to be my favorite films of the year. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
I'm really excited. Right, I'm really excited to see. I mean, I'm sitting in a bar right now and I'm drinking brown sugar bourbon spiked apple cider. So this movie might resonate with me. So, Leanne, did you get to see it?
I haven't seen it. It was actually planned for tonight, so I'll be watching it when we're done.
Oh, very cool! Yay!
I look forward to you. Tweet me what you think when you're done. I really look forward to what you think.
Will do.
My number one was a movie that I didn't even have on my radar going into VIFF. In fact, a friend of mine who is also covering VIFF wanted to see it, which is what made me even take a look at it, because even scrolling through, like, I had no idea anything about this movie. But my number one is Black Bear. Oh man, guys, I love psychological thrillers. I like movies that I have to spend a lot of mind space trying to put together and figure out. And knowing nothing about Black Bear really set that perfect space for me to enjoy the hell out of this movie. Because did both of you guys see this movie?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh man. So I'm getting through part one, and it's just what happens with those characters just gets so awkward and so uncomfortable and so like just psychologically challenging. The thing, and I covered this movie, so I did end up having a chance to talk with the director, Lawrence Michael Levine, about the film, and it's very interesting how the film came together. If you have time, I recommend listening to that interview just to kind of get how it came together, because the movie seems so well thought out, or at least so well like intentioned. Like there was some kind of like message that was trying to get across, but yeah, it kind of haphazardly came together in a sense. It's a very interesting interview. I recommend watching it, but it's just such a puzzling movie, and piecing it together, almost literally piecing it together, because the components of the characters kind of rearranged from one part to the next. So piecing it together was such a fun challenge for me, and the psychologically challenging component of it. It just, there's so much about it that I enjoyed as someone who enjoys that psychological thriller genre. And at the end of it, I just kind of sat there like, man, what did I just experience? I must watch it again. And so I did. And so yeah, I've watched it like 3 times now. It's and every time I kind of get something else out of it. And if you watch the interview with Lawrence, that's kind of the point. I can't, like, I don't know I can't remember his exact quote, but the idea from him was there wasn't anything in particular that he wanted people to take away from the film, and that's the takeaway from the film. And that kind of resonated with me. It's so weird. Like, this whole thing is bizarre. Like, am I supposed to like this much? I don't know. But
I mean,
yeah,
like, there's no law against it.
Yeah, I know, right? But yeah, I can't stop raving about the film. In fact, I feel kind of like even in the interview, I'm just like raving about the film to him, and just like, I don't know, like awkwardly telling him how much I adore this movie. But I do. It's a movie that really resonates with me, and I don't know if other people have the same reaction as I do, or other people like that cerebral challenge, I guess, of like trying to figure out these characters and being dropped into the middle of who knows what's happening, and then you have to piece it together. But that's what I like going to the movies for. And I mentioned this in the interview, the only thing that I was really sad about was that I could not see this movie in a theater, because this is one that I would have really liked to have had that like audience experience. There's so much to react to in this movie, and I would have loved to have been in a theater reacting with this like full theater of people trying to like process the film.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that film in a theater would have been a hell of a thing. That's the one thing I really missed this year was, not so much the like waiting in line or anything, but just definitely the that palpable like audience experience is one thing I missed. I also really like one thing I sort of love and hate about that movie, and I didn't like it as much as you do, but I really like that it's basically impossible to talk about without spoiling.
That is true.
You can say that there's a big shift in the middle, but if you say anything else, you're going to ruin something for someone.
Yep.
So like, it's a movie that is like, it's pretty much designed that you go into it either completely blind or completely aware. And I actually don't think that would spoil it, technically.
Interesting.
Because it is very well executed, and it has a couple of really good performances in it. I thought in particular, Aubrey Plaza was good. I thought in particular Christopher Abbott was very good in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially in the first half. But yeah, I did really enjoy the movie as well.
Yeah. Did you guys watch Possessor? It also has Christopher Abbott.
No.
Yeah, it was I'm pretty sure it was an in theater. They had in theater screenings, but I managed.
There was three
What's that?
films. There was three films that only had in theater screenings, and Possessor was one of them.
Mhm.
Oh, interesting. I did end up getting a screener for it, and Christopher Abbott's in that as well, and it really just kind of affirms him. I mean, he's a great actor, and it was really cool that two movies that he's in made it into VIFF, and both of those movies he does a phenomenal job with his roles. So yeah, Chris in Black Bear, I think his character. I can't say that. I think that he does a great job in Black Bear. He's a great actor, but so is Aubrey Plaza and Sarah Gadon. Like that trio in Black Bear just does such a great job communicating all of the intricacies of their characters and how they clash. And the challenge of that movie is like piecing together why they clash so much, but. Or maybe not even clash. There's some points of clashing, but like why their dynamics are what they are. It's, oh man, you're right, Matt. You can't talk about it without spoiling it, and I'm trying not to spoil it.
Yeah,
I love those kind of movies.
I would just add that it's also been really cool to see Sarah Gadon, who's Canadian, see her star. Like I think I first saw her in Cronenberg's son's, Brandon Cronenberg's film Antiviral, like.
Oh yeah.
And she's been on a pretty constant rise since then. I think it's really. She's quite.
Yeah. I remember, so when I saw her in this movie, I had to pause it because I'm like, she's so familiar. Why do I know her? But it's because I got Quibi and watched her in Most Dangerous Game. And I was like, oh, yes, that's right. Yeah, she did do that.
Last year at VIFF, she was in that movie about Patricia Hearst.
That's right.
Was she?
He was in Castle Rock last year, too. Castle Rock? I think it was Castle Rock. Yeah, Castle Rock last year. I know it was on something I watched on TV. I think it was Castle Rock.
I'm pretty sure you watch a lot of TV, Matt. Right? Gotta keep it all straight.
Probably too much.
Probably too much. That's okay. It means good coverage for your website.
Yeah. Quick poll, and I don't want to go off on our rail here, but who of us tried Quibi and then who of us stayed with it?
Quibi.
I watched Most Dangerous Game and then immediately unsubscribed. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. 90 days was a very generous time period. because
Did you like Quibi, Leanne, like at all?
No, I've only got Netflix and Crave. That's it.
Oh yeah, you're not missing it.
You're not, and it's unfortunate because I like the concept. I actually, as nuanced as this sounds, I love the fact that you can turn the camera or you can turn your phone in any orientation, and what the media that you're watching works in either orientation. And it was actually really fun watching The Most Dangerous Game in portrait mode on my phone, because I've seen movies and TV shows, widescreen all the time. So I figured, what would it be like if I watched this show in portrait mode? And so I did, and it was actually really interesting. But the content on Quibi is almost there. They need a little bit better writers, and maybe
everything they did is bad.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but I mean, I guess as far as platforms go, did you guys get to? I imagine you guys got to interact with VIFF Connect. How was that experience for you? I heard really good things about it.
I thought it was great. I found that the sound was better quality than the other festival that I saw earlier this month. Am I allowed to say that?
You can say that.
I'm not gonna stop you.
And I really loved the intro that VIFF did that honored First Nations people and lifted up First Nations voices, and the mentioning of being on unceded territories that hit home for me, and I really appreciated it.
Yeah, I guess Thomas, you didn't get to see that because you weren't actually able to access the platform, right?
Nope, not this year. Maybe when the border opens next year. I can hop over.
Every film was preceded by every film was preceded by a 6-minute like acknowledgement of First Nations territory and culture and
Dang. See, I always loved that part. I honestly, like when I attended VIFF in years past, it's always fun to get that intro, the sizzle reel, the presenter, the same monologues about being an unceded territory. Like it's all a part of the experience, and yeah, I really missed that this year. So next year.
Going back to VIFF Connect, I really liked VIFF Connect, and I say that as someone I know that Leanne, you covered TIFF as well, right?
I did.
So TIFF used Shift 72, which is the same platform that Fantasia, which Thomas and I both attended.
Well, Fantasia, I couldn't attend either. Officially, like that was another one that I didn't have access to the platform. So I'm just listening to your guys' experience. I get to kind of take in.
So Shift 72 is not bad by any stretch, but the way that VIFF did a couple of things I much preferred. They licensed a different platform, name of which escapes me now that I'm talking about it out loud. Instead of being like so at Fantasia, they did the thing where it was all the releases were timed. So if you wanted to watch films live, you had to tune in at like 7 p.m. Eastern on a Thursday to watch this film live. Whereas at VIFF Connect, they were just there. Over time were like the creator talks, which were filmed live and then made available in an archived way. And as I understand it, are going to stay on there in an archived way as well.
Nice.
And then also just that they made a proper app for all the platforms rather than just relying on the web interface and like AirPlay or DLNA or whatever streaming or Chromecast or whatever. I really like that I could just load it up on my Apple TV and just watch it. I think VIFF did a really, really good job with the app, with not only with licensing the one that was going to work best, but then in maintaining the content really well. And then every day, so I got to talk to Curtis Wolashuk, who's the head of programming for VIFF, and he would talk a little bit about how every day he would log on and like curate the top row. So I really appreciate that they really still try to take a really strong curatorial approach to the festival in that way, instead of just sort of like throwing everything on and hoping for the best. So yeah, I think that VIFF Connect was really well executed, and I know that it is sticking around, like it's not going away. Obviously, most of the films are going away, but for the time being. But I know they're going to keep it around, and they're going to use it for like ancillary content for they do a lot of live screenings at the VIFF Theater, and they're going to be showing like content from the same director or content from the same school of cinema when they do that, which I think is a really cool idea. And as far as I understand, as long as you're like a VIFF member, you get access to it. So
nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Very cool. I guess, and maybe this is on topic, maybe not, I don't know, but like as far as the future of film festivals, what would you guys like to see now that we've experienced film festivals in person, we've now had this virtual film festival experience. What do you see the future of film festivals being like, particularly for VIFF, a year from now?
I think a combination of both would be great. I did miss the in-person like interactions with people in those lineups when you're waiting to get in, making friends.
That's how I met you guys. Both of you guys I met at VIFF. It's great.
So I missed that part. Like it was a bit lonely watching the movie by myself, and you miss out on the audience interaction, the audience reactions to the films. But being online was a great solution for what we're dealing with right now in terms of the pandemic. And it was also great for people who have accessibility issues or getting down to a theater might not be possible for them. And for this festival to be available to everybody in BC, that was really cool. So people who are up north could watch it. So I think for future, let's say after the pandemic, if they kept it as both, I think would be really successful.
Yeah, I kind of hope they do the same. I miss all of the things you're talking about as well. The way I describe it to other people is that like the the movie lover, the film goer in me misses being in a dark room in a crowd of people watching a film, but the introvert in me also loves sitting on my couch in my pajamas watching movies. It's sort of both worlds for me. I think my favorite thing is probably, or the thing I think I appreciate the most is just that it is available to all of BC, not just in Vancouver. So I was able to make recommendations to, my parents, my dad who lives on Salt Spring, and my in-laws who live on Vancouver Island, and friends in the interior, and they were all able to actually check those things out without having to like plan a trip to Vancouver, which I think is a big advantage. And so I do really hope they keep that kind of thing going. And not only for the festival, but for next year, but just for, like I say, for their plans to keep it running with that sort of ancillary content and such through the year. I hope they keep it up. And I hope it's made in a reasonably accessible way.
Yeah, I miss BC.
BC misses you too.
Aw, yes, I miss going to Vancouver and being in British Columbia, and it'll be nice when the border opens again and I can come actually see you guys in person. That would be great. But yeah, I think everything you guys are saying makes sense. It would be nice. There's so much about the pandemic that I think is changing how society operates, and I think a lot of these changes aren't necessarily temporary. I think that a lot of these changes are things that can sustain even when things get back to quote unquote normal. And virtual film festivals is one of those things. We have the technology, and right now we're at a point where we can experiment with that technology and try to see what works best. Like Matt said, with some festivals, you have to wait till a certain time until you can see that movie, which that's one model doing it. But with VIFF, it's just available and you can see it whenever during that time period. Which model is better is going to be experimented with over the next few months as film festivals keep going and they keep experimenting with what is working and what can be tweaked. So I'm excited to see what the results of all of that is and how film festivals incorporate that into their operations going forward, even after the pandemic. I think next week is the first time I'll be covering AFI next week. So it's the first time I can actually log into a platform for a film festival this year, which I'm excited about. But it'll be my opportunity to experience the platform and see how that works for me, and I can get my opinion on it. So yeah, there's so much that we're kind of learning about what we can do and what works best, and it sounds like VIFF did a really great job this year from you guys, and I'm happy to hear that was a success. And yeah, I am also happy that both of you were able to cover VIFF this year. This was really an exciting thing to be able to talk to you guys about movies and bounce ideas off of you guys and thoughts, and this has been a great time.
It was awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
So perfect. Well, I guess.
To talk to.
Oh, what's that?
It's always nice to have more film nerds to talk to.
always nice. And thanks to technology, even with a closed border, we can still communicate about it. So that's great. Yeah, I guess we can go ahead and wrap it up. Leanne, what's happening with content from you, and how can people connect with you?
I'm on Twitter at Leanne_Mclaren, and you can hear me on 103.5 QMFM afternoons with the iHeartRadio app, or dialing on your radio, or QMFM.com.
Awesome. Matt, how can people connect with you?
I am on Twitter, Posterboy81, and also Awesome Friday CA, and the weblog awesomefriday.ca, where I post more than I have time to post, pretty much.
You do post a lot of content. It's great. It's really good stuff to follow. I mean, I recommend everyone follow both you guys. You put out really good stuff, and it's awesome to read your thoughts on movies and things in the industry. So thank you for putting all that out there. People can connect with me on Twitter and Instagram at beingtsj. You can follow my blog on Twitter and Instagram as well at Movies for Real, spelled FORREEL. And subscribe to our blog, moviesforreal.net. There'll be a nice subscribe pop-up that comes up. I encourage you to enter your email and stay connected with us. I'm putting out a lot of content, and like I said, I have AFI coming up next week, and I'm excited to be covering that. And we'll see what other film festivals coming up this season I can fit into the schedule.
Leanne, what's next for you? What are you covering? Anything else in the rest of the year?
Not festivals.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, I misheard. Leanne, go ahead and.
I don't have any festivals lined up, just a stack of books for book reviews I'll be doing.
Oh, nice. Is anything jumping off the pile at you?
Sorry?
Is anything like jumping out at you in the pile you have?
Yeah. Hold on, I'll grab the book. One sec.
Yes, please.
So I just got this in the mail. It's called As You Were. It's coming out in February. And it's about a Native American man. That's all I know about so far. And the American Indian boarding schools, which is similar to what happened in Canada with the residential schools. So that's on my list of books to read.
Nice.
Awesome. That's exciting. Nice.
Yeah.
Matt, you have some cool stuff going on your blog.
Yeah, I've managed to establish some actual press relationships now, so I'm getting early access content from Apple TV and Netflix and
Nice.
Disney. Disney's the big one I just got, which is good.
Whoa.
And I'm working on a few others. I'm also going to be covering. I was going to be covering Nightstream, and I'm really upset that I'm not going to be able to, because it turns out that the whole thing is geolocked to the US. There's no way to even get me screeners. Which is really frustrating.
That's one thing I think can change about film festivals. I don't know what the legals are behind it, but it would be nice if geo-locking can be a little more comprehensive, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, from a business point of view, I mean, I get it. Like part of the reason that like VIFF is geo-locked to BC is so they can sort of gauge regional reactions, right? Like John Ware is playing at VIFF and at SIFF, Calgary International Festival, and it's that's purposeful so they can sort of independently gauge those reactions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which makes sense, right? But I am going to be covering a little bit later in November, late October into November. There's a channel up in Canada called Super Channel, and they're doing a week-long festival on their channel called Blood in the Snow, and it's all Canadian horror films. So I should be covering that, which is exciting because I don't know if you remember, but I covered a movie at Fantasia called Bleed With Me by a Canadian director called William Moses, and her next film is in Blood in the Snow. So I'm really excited to see that because I really like that movie, her other movie.
Very cool. Yeah, so many cool things coming up. It's exciting. Awesome. Well, thanks for having this conversation, guys. I think we talked about some really good movies, and yeah, hopefully the things that we mentioned will end up accessible to more people so that they can, we can recommend going to see them and continue sharing the movies and stories that we enjoy. So.